NeonicVoid Productions presents.
Hi, hello. How's it going? Welcome back to Book Watchers, where the plots are made up and the movies don't matter. We're going to read the book anyway.
Mhm.
Or at least I did. Devin may listen to the audiobook later. May.
Eventually. Once I get through actually reading a book, because I'm in the middle of reading a book, actually not listening to the audiobook of it, only because there's no audiobook of it.
And which book is that?
The Heart. It's the one that's like the shape of water meets the thing. I'm like,
you finished that already.
No, I haven't gotten around to it because I've been doing X-Men stuff or Krakoa and then watching Wheel of Time first 2 seasons and then
And you still got to finish the Tales of Verania.
I did.
You haven't finished those yet.
No, I have not.
There's you said you only read 3 books. There's 5.
I know. I only listened to technically the first one. I have the other two. The next 2. I just haven't done anything with them yet. They're on my list.
You gotta read. You gotta finish them. They're hysterical. I love those books.
I know. They're so good.
They're not even serious books. They're just when I started reading this, I was just I was expecting something more of something on the same level of Green Creek and Bear Otter and the Kid.
Yeah.
But what I got was basically Meet the Spartans, but Tales of Verania.
Yeah.
But it was hilarious. I loved it. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today, we are talking about the 3rd installment of the Wheel of Time series. So this is book 3, The Dragon Reborn. So this book is it's kind of like a turning point in the series in total because the first 2 books were really more of setting the stage for the rest of the story. And so book 1 is the start of everything, and book 2 kind of brings us closer to the revelation of Rand being the Dragon Reborn and him beginning to fulfill prophecies of the Dragon Reborn. And now book 3 is going to be focused on him fulfilling another prophecy of the Dragon Reborn, because there are dozens of prophecies concerning the Dragon Reborn, things that he's going to do that will basically determine what he's going to do next. These prophecies actually helped him determine what to do next, especially after the events of Falm at Toman's Head. Because at the end of book 2, I forgot to mention this in the last episode. Part of the prophecy that he fulfilled was that he would battle the Dark One, quote unquote, the Dark One in the sky, and an image of him and the Dark One could be seen in the sky. So everyone for like dozens of miles around the city could see these massive projections of him and the Dark One fighting each other.
Jeez.
And also part of that very same prophecy was that his banner would be flown over the city. Now at the end of season 2, the dragon banner was just Moraine creating a dragon out of fire. But in the book, it's an actual banner. It's Luz Theron's dragon banner. It's like a plain white banner made of a material that is described as being one whole piece and not woven threads, like a tapestry. And it has an image of a serpentine dragon, 4 legs, red and gold scales, lion's mane kind of thing, like a traditional Asian long dragon.
Ooh.
So basically like that. There's another thing I need to make a correction on, because last couple novels, when talking about the development of these books, I said Robert Jordan originally planned on writing a 3-novel series, but then ended up writing more books for the same story because he just had so much in lore wise. I was doing some research recently and I realized, I got that wrong. So it was actually originally supposed to be 6 novels, not 3.
Oh.
And Yeah, and but he just kept going because there was just so much that he put into, like, so much work that he put into this series alone that it ended up just going further than just 6 books. But of course, unfortunately, he passed away in 2007 before he could finish his last book.
May he rest in
His last
peace.
couple books. May he rest in peace. And Brian Sanderson came in, reviewed his notes, and wrote the last 3 novels because he had just finished. He had just finished writing book 11, I believe.
Was he a close friend to the author?
Brian Sanderson,
was he hired for the job?
I believe Brian Sanderson was hired for the job. I got to look that up later. But
I'll get back to you.
He did follow. Yeah, he did follow Robert Jordan's work, and he was familiar with the story. And I think they were colleagues. So that's why they picked him, because he was more like familiar with Jordan's work, and was able to like cohesively bring the story to a close without really deviating from Jordan's vision.
Yeah.
Or the source material. And plus, Jordan wrote like so many notes on his stories that Sanderson really didn't even have to like fill in the blanks much. It was like, oh, it's all here. So he just had to like put it together. The end result is the last 3 novels of the series, and today we are talking about The Dragon Reborn. Like I said, this story is going to be more about Rand coming into himself and accepting that he is the Dragon Reborn. This book takes place like several months after the events of book 2. Winter had come. Winter had blown in, and Rand, Perrin, Moraine, and a few and the Chimerian warriors that had traveled with them in book 2, they all had taken shelter in the mountains to the east. This very mountain range was actually, I think it's called it's the Mountains of Mist. You know, edit that part out, Devin. Let me actually double check.
I will edit the part out.
Yeah, I don't want them to say, like, I think. Wait, no, I know.
Oh no, I watched these. I spent a couple days editing these videos, like the American Gods one. Oof, that one was a rough one for me. I'm still editing it. It's a lot. Anyway.
Okay.
But you're Gucci.
Okay, so they are called the Mountains of Mist. Okay, so after the events of Falm and the Battle of Toman's Head, Rand, Moraine, and their friends, they all head east and take shelter in the Mountains of Mist. That's where they wait out the winter. Along with them, they brought the soldiers that traveled with them in book 2, the soldiers from Shinar. And so they all took shelter. The Shinarans pledged themselves to the Dragon Reborn, so they loyally follow Rand now as the Dragon Reborn. Varen Sedai, who had traveled with Rand and Perrin throughout most of the previous book, she decided to take Elaine, Egwene, and Nynaeve back to the White Tower so they can, first of all, explain themselves why they had left the tower and continue their training to be Aes Sedai. And along with them, they brought Mat, because Mat is still bound to the dagger from Shadar Logoth. And unfortunately, the dagger is killing him. It's slowly siphoning his life force, and if they don't separate him fully from the dagger soon, he will die.
Yeah.
And he very nearly does die. Their group, they were forced to take shelter throughout most of the winter too, until the cold weather receded, and they were able to continue on their journey. They do make it to Tar Valon, and barely in the nick of time, because Mat was pretty much comatose by that point. So he very nearly died. They did have a brief encounter with some White Cloaks. So Tar Valon does control a large territory north of the Kingdom of Andor. And the thing is, White Cloaks, they technically it's not illegal for them to be in the country itself, in and around Tarvalon. They're not permitted in the city itself, but they do regularly patrol the lands around Tarvalon, and that they can't do anything to the Aes Sedai because, especially that close to the tower, if the Aes Sedai find out that White Cloaks executed some of their sisters in their territory, they would definitely send an entire regiment of troops to come and take care of them.
Yeah.
But they did run into a small battalion of White Cloaks, but Varen kindly de-escalated the situation and led them on to Tarvalon. There was a small outburst from the three girls because Egwene, for one, still very traumatized from her time as a Damani with the Shan Chan, is terrified of being bound again or being imprisoned. So she ended up lashing out at the White Cloaks and scared them off alongside Nynaeve and Elaine. Varen chastised the fuck out of them after that because for the Aes Sedai, it is forbidden to use the power as a weapon. So you can't really. They don't believe that you should use it for anything else other than extreme self-defense in the extreme in the most extreme situations. So they really limit themselves on what they can use the power for. But that doesn't mean that they're no less powerful.
Yeah.
So they do make it to the city. The thing about, I felt really bad for the girls because even though they had a valid excuse and begrudgingly the ambulance seat was able to back them up, they still ended up getting punished and treated as if they were runaways. Because when they left Tarvalon, they were under the impression that they had permission to leave Tarvalon, and they had this on good authority from Leandrin Sedai, a member who is a member of the Red Aja, and she lied to them, saying that she got permission to take them out of the city, but she ended up taking them through the ways to Toman's Head, and from there she turned them over to the Shan Chan, and it was revealed that Leandrin as well as the High Lord Suroth are dark friends. And that Leandrin herself, Leandrin herself is a member of the unofficial 8th Aja that the rest of the tower denies its existence vehemently. In fact, they will bite your head off if you even mention this Aja, and that is the Black Aja. So the Black Aja is a hidden Aja. It is like a parasite that grew within the White Tower, and they are made up of sisters from every Aja, and they serve the Dark One. They've pledged themselves to the Dark One, and they act as agents in the tower. And they are Aes Sedai, so they can channel and they can use their power. And somehow, they are not affected by the Three Oaths. So, like I've mentioned before, the Three Oaths are the Aes Sedai cannot tell any lies. They cannot make weapons for which men can kill other men with. And they cannot use the power as a weapon, and can only act in extreme, unless of course it is used in extreme cases of self-defense or in the fight against the dark. So for the Black Aja, for some reason, aren't bound by these oaths. It hasn't been really, like, even now in book 7, they haven't really talked much about the Black Aja because that's not the focus. Like, right now, they're not the focus of the story. They haven't really been the focus of the story since book 4.
We're not even on book 4 yet.
I know. So
you're talking about they weren't the focus till book 4.
So like, they're gonna be, the Black Aja is gonna be part of the focus in book 3 and also book 4. But after book 4, it's like they're kind of like,
they're just there.
They're just there. They're not really the focus of the story. But
gotcha.
So the Amerlin seat had to. So they were brought before the Amerlin seat, and Suan was forced. Like, she really didn't have much of a choice but to chastise them because they left the city. Because for one thing, she's not ready to acknowledge, at least publicly acknowledge, that the Black Aja exists. Though she does tell the girls that, well, your story does have some truth to it, because not long after you disappeared, Leandrin reappeared in the tower, and she, along with 12 other sisters, raided the vaults of the tower and stole a large number of Terangrial and Angrial.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly Terangrial. So the White Tower, they have a massive collection of the magical artifacts of Terangrial, Angrial, and even a few Sa'angrial. Sa'angrial are very rare because they're more powerful versions of the Angrial.
Mm-hmm.
But the Black Aja revealed themselves, and 13 sisters, including Leandrin, stole a large number of Terangrial from the vaults, and they disappeared. They killed a few servants as well, and I believe they did end up killing a couple of sisters. Although this burglary was covered up because the Amerlin does not want knowledge of the Black Aja to become like commonplace. So the best thing she tells the girls is that, well, I believe you,
Mm-hmm.
but until we can figure out what to do about the Black Aja, I'm turning you over to the Mistress of Novices, and well, light have mercy on your souls.
Oh, that's some bullshit.
I know it was some bullshit. Like they're being punished for being victims, and the thing is that the girls did tell, including Varen, they all told the Amerlin of the existence of the Shan Shan, which is a threat to the tower, because the Shan Shan believe in collaring every channeler and enslaving channelers. So, but Suan dismisses this and says, like, they're not here anymore. They've been, from what you say, they've been chased out of the continent. So that's problem for another day. That's tomorrow Suwan's problem, not today Suwan's. So the girls begin their training again. They continue in their studies and really have to deal with unjust punishment. It's the way I see it. They were being punished unjustly because they were victims in this whole situation.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there. Going over to Rand and Moraine. Rand has become, since he's been hiding in the mountains for the whole winter, he's becoming increasingly restless. And one thing he's having trouble accepting is that he has trouble accepting that he is the Dragon Reborn, even though Moraine says thoroughly convinced he is the Dragon Reborn and tells him that. The two of them are constantly bickering, and while Moraine outwardly seems like she's unfazed by this, she is really frustrated by Rand's behavior and just the fact that they're just constantly butting heads. Their whole team is just basically waiting at this point for what to do next. Moraine is organizing a kind of like a recruitment effort. She is trying to get the word of the Dragon Reborn spread to every corner of the land, try to get sympathizers, people to swear to the Dragon Reborn. She's managing a spy network. Basically, she's using the Blue Aja's network of spies to spread information and get information. At one point, though, their camp is found by a horde of Trollocs, and they are attacked. Their team does fight off the Trolloc forces. Rand is forced to use his power more rather than use his using his Heron-marked blade, because in the end of Book 2, his sword, which was a Blaze Master's sword, Blade Master's swords were created by the Aes Sedai thousands of years ago, before they began taking the Three Oaths, and if anything, it was because of these weapons that they made is why they started taking the Three Oaths, because they made these virtually indestructible weapons, and well, they gave them to the wrong people, and these people waged war and killed a lot, and just started killing a lot of people. So after that matter was settled, the weapons, the Aes Sedai swore to never make weapons like that again. But there's still remnants of them out there, and Rand had his father's blade. but unfortunately, it was destroyed at the end of book 2 with his confrontation with Ishamel, the dark one. And when that happened, he channeled some of his own power into the blade to strike a much heavier blow against the Shamel. And when he did that, this caused the heron marks. So like the heron itself was imprinted along the blade as well as the hilt of the blade of the sword. So when he stabbed a Shamel, when he was channeling through the blade, this ended up causing the herons that were stamped onto the blade to be branded into his palms. So that also fulfilled part of the prophecy because he will be twice marked. And well, now he has 2 marks on his hands in the shape of the heron.
Sure do.
But he doesn't have his sword anymore, so he has to use his power to fight off the Trollocs. When he does this, he does shake the mountain more, and it creates like a kind of like splits the mountain in half a bit. Not by much. He just leaves a large crack. And after the battle, Rand. So up until this point, Rand had begun obsessing with over the prophecies of the Dragon Reborn, and particularly he became more obsessed with the prophecies concerning a powerful weapon that was left behind from the Age of Legends, and this weapon is the sword that cannot be wielded, or the sword that cannot be touched. Yep, and this sword is called Kalandor. Kalandor. I know it sounds. I'm trying to
insert picture of Kalandor.
Yeah. So I'm trying to make sure I say Kalandor a certain way instead of calling it calendar.
Calendar.
But it's so Kalandor is it is actually a Sa'angreal. Sa'angreals are much more powerful versions of Angreals, which if a channeler wields one, the Angreal allows them to channel more energy from the source safely without burning themselves out or killing themselves. So they're like magnifying glasses. They're magnifiers for the power. And Kalandor was one of 3 incredibly powerful Sa'angreals that were created at the end of the Age of Legends. It was never used back then because it was made right when the war ended and men began going mad from the taint on Sidon. And so the remnants of the ancient Aes Sedai, what they ended up doing is they built a fortress in a kingdom called Tyr, and this fortress is called the Stone of Tyr. And inside the Stone of Tyr is a large column-filled room with a dome in it. And inside the middle of this domed room is Kalandor. So they placed Kalandor there. It's suspended in midair using weaves of the source, and it's protected by a powerful barrier. Now this barrier, so that's why it's called the sword that cannot be touched or wielded, is because anybody who tries to reach out and grab the sword, their hands meet like an invisible barrier. So nobody can reach it or touch it or even break this barrier. And it is prophesied, it is said that only the Dragon Reborn will be able to take the sword. And Rand, still not convinced he's a Dragon Reborn, he realizes that, all right, well, the only way to prove myself or Moraine right to settle this matter is to go and take Kalandor. Now he does mention that he does briefly mention this to Moraine, that this is what they should do, but Moraine is like, no, it's too dangerous. You need to stay here. We need to make sure that we get support and spread the word. He's like, well, how can we be sure that I'm the Dragon Reborn? Like, this is the only way to prove it. So after the Trollocs the Trolloc attack on their camp, and Rand's power split the mountain, it also created a path for which Rand was able to sneak out of the encampment without anybody seeing. So really, throughout most of the book, we're not going to see much of Rand because he'll be traveling alone. So he spends the next several weeks traveling by himself, heading east from the mountains to Tyr. so that way he can either claim or not claim Kalandor. Moraine, after he leaves, Moraine, understandably pissed, sets off after him, and Lan and Perrin both go along with him. I believe Min also goes with them as well.
Mhm.
Does she? Honestly, Min is often, like, for at least through the first couple of books, she's such a footnote in the story that I don't really, like, pay attention to what she's doing. Didn't really pay attention to what she was doing. It was just like, oh, what? Because it wasn't just... Okay. It wasn't until book 4 that Min gets sent to Tarvalon, and she has to pretend to be, like... Okay, so it is Min. Because she does travel with them for a bit. Anyway, so they also begin their journey east to find to track down Rand. Along the way, sorry, I just really needed to touch on the story because I forgot a lot about it.
I mean, it's
Because,
been
like,
a minute.
it's been a couple months since I've read it, but, like, I'm just like, fuck, what am I blanking on? Okay, so Rand takes off on his own journey towards Tyr to claim the sword that cannot be touched, and along the way he is chased by both Dark Friends and Halfmen, and even at one point Shadowhounds. And Shadowhounds are nasty buggers. But as he's traveling, Rand is beginning to experiment more with the power, basically learn how to control it. Because the thing about the true power is he can't really learn how to use his gifts from Moraine, because the thing is that the way a female channeler learns how to use their power is very different from how a man can learn how to use their power. Like, how they use it is very differently. It happens very differently. So whenever a female channeler begins learning how to channel, they are first taught. One of the first things they're taught is that they do not actually control the source. So it's the same, more or less the same for men, but the way that they have to embrace the source is not by, like, taking hold of it and controlling it, but rather surrendering to it. And when they surrender to it, then they can control it from there. Because otherwise, if they try to, like, take control of it and try to manhandle it, it'll burn them away. Whereas it's the opposite for men. So when a man embraces the source, they can't surrender to Sidon, because they do, then Sidon will burn them away. So what they have to do is reach out, grab it by the horns, and manhandle it into doing what they want. They have to take control. So men, when they channel Sidon, they have to take control of it, whereas women, when they channel Sidar, they have to surrender to it. And it's the same concept for everything they do. So, like, how they channel, how they create their weaves, it's very different. So Rand, unfortunately, because he doesn't have anybody to teach him, he has to figure this stuff out on his own. And at one point, when he's cornered by a pack of Shadowhounds, he accidentally discovers how to create Balefire, which if you're a D&D player, Balefire is like Ray of Disintegration, except instead of turning you into ash, it erases you from time.
Oof.
So, like, depending on how powerful you are, it'll only, like, erase you. If you're not very strong and you use Balefire, it'll only erase that person from, like, the last few seconds or even a few minutes. Moraine, it's revealed later on in this book that she herself had rediscovered how to use Balefire, because Balefire is considered illegal and forbidden to even know how to use. So she, in their journey, she and her group gets cornered by Shadowhounds too, and the only way to effectively kill Shadowhounds is to completely destroy their bodies. And the best way to do that is Balefire, and she uses Balefire. So, Yeah, so it's just it's basically one long chase. At one point, while they're stopped in a village, uh, Perrin notices that this village had captured an Aiel, which is very unusual for this. Which is very unusual because the Aiel rarely come, if not ever, come out of the Threefold Lands, or the Aiel Waste, as it's known by the Westlands. And in fact, they actually encountered several Aiel in Book 2. I didn't really mention them before, but they do encounter several Aiel in Book 2 while they were still hunting for the Horn of Valir. So the Aiel have come into the Westlands because they are looking for their own version of the Dragon Reborn, because they themselves have prophecies concerning the Dragon Reborn. Though they don't call him the Dragon Reborn, they call him the Karakorn.
Karakorn.
And
Okay.
mhm. And so they're trying to find him because from what their prophecies tell them is that one of their own will be born of the old blood and raised by the ancient blood. So basically, this refers to an Aiel will be born in the Westlands, and he will be raised by someone of the ancient blood. And with Rand, it actually it fits because Tam, his adoptive father, being from the Two Rivers, and people of the Two Rivers are descended from the ancient kingdom of Manetheren. They are the Old Blood. So Rand is over here not only fulfilling prophecies of the Dragon Reborn, but also of the Aiel Karakorn. So Perrin realizes that an Aiel was captured, but when he asks them what was the Aiel's crime, the villager said, "Well, he didn't do anything. We just caught him and his companion off guard. We killed his companion and captured him." Well, that was what really happened. He was actually captured by a band of hunters for the Horn of Valir. And thing is, in Westlands, the Aiel are looked at with a sort of fearful respect mainly because of the Aiel War. There are still a lot of people, especially people in lands that were directly affected by the Aiel War. They look at the Aiel with fear and hatred. And so anytime an Aiel is seen, since now that they're seeing a bunch of Aiel running around, they'll either take measures to avoid these Aiel, or they'll capture and kill them. And Perrin saw this as like incredibly wrong. Like there was something wrong about just imprisoning a guy because he's an Aiel. Like he himself was not part of the war, because this guy was pretty young and the Aiel War took place like 20 years ago. So in the middle of the night, Perrin releases this Aiel and he sets the Aiel free. But when he does this, the Hunters of the Horn, as well as a small band of villagers, catch him in the act, and they attack Perrin. But the Aiel, who's a man named Gaul, the thing about Aiel is that they do carry weapons, but even without their weapons, they are incredibly fierce fighters, and they're fearless. They will dive headfirst into a battle without hesitation. And before they get into a fight, Aiel will veil themselves. So what they do is they wear like a kind of like a dark tan scarf called a shofa. And what they do is they pull the shofa up over their head and up over their face, so it completely veils their face, save for their eyes. And they, even if like they're being charged at, they'll just like they have all the time in the world, they'll just be like, okay, we're good to go. And then Gaul dives headfirst into this party of like 20 men and beats the shit out of them.
Damn.
Barehanded, no
less. God damn.
Gaul does end up traveling with Perrin, but this happens a little bit later because he does take off after this. And but we do see Gaul again later, and he chooses to travel with Perrin because the Aiel have a very strong sense of honor, and
Mhm.
since Perrin saved his life and released him from his imprisonment, Gaul has what is called Toe. Their code of honor is called Jiet Toe, and when you have Toe with somebody, that means that you're honor bound to like fulfill it. Like it's kind of like all right, you saved my life, I owe you one. Or hey, I did something that was wrong to you, so now I have to make it right. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like how it works. I don't even fully understand it, and it's been kind of like more or less the topic has been more or less touched on in like the last three in like book 4, 5, and 6 even. So I
Mhm.
still don't really understand it, but it's kind of like the gist of it. Uh, when this happens, the next day, Moraine, after this fight, Perrin informs everybody that they need to get the fuck out of this village, and they
Mhm.
do take a ferry to take them downriver. When this happens, Perrin didn't realize that another hunter of the Horn had witnessed the fight, but she didn't take part of it. If anything, after seeing what Perrin had did, she decides to join their team going east. She at first introduces herself as Mandarb because uh, Hunters of the Horn like to give themselves new names, so that way, if they do find the Horn of Valir, they'll go down in history by a more heroic name. But Perrin ends up laughing in her face and tells her, "Hey, see that black stallion over there?" And he points to Land's warhorse.
Mhm.
He's like, "His name is Mandarb." And this embarrasses her, but she later changes her name to Fail, and Fail becomes a important character, especially to Perrin, and she continues traveling with them uh, throughout the rest of the book. Eventually, the ferry does take them through a city called Ilion, and that's where they dock. They do spend a night in Ilion, but the entire time that their team is there in Ilion, Moraine has this strong sense of dread, like a shadow is hanging over the city, and she
Mhm.
has some suspicions, but she doesn't really reveal it to them. And she tells them to wait for her, and she goes out in the middle of the night and doesn't. And she's gone for several hours, and she eventually returns like in the very latest hour, and she looks terrified, and she says, "Our worst fears have been my worst fears are true. There's a Forsaken in the city." And the Forsaken in the city of Ilion is none other than a Forsaken named Samael.
Ooh.
So Samael is one of the 13 Forsaken. He's described. I'm just gonna say it because he's short. He's short for a guy, and the thing is that this causes him to have that small dog syndrome,
You mean
and he's
Napoleon
always had this.
complex?
Yeah, he has definitely has a Napoleon complex. He's very paranoid, even when it comes to dealing with the other Forsaken, and uh, really the only person he ever deals with most of the time is another one of the Forsaken named Grendel.
Mhm.
But Grendel is not really introduced until like book 4, so we're not really going to talk about her much.
Mhm.
But Moraine hints that if Samael is here, who knows where the other Forsaken are. So after discovering Samael's presence in the city, uh, they all make a run for it. They flee the city, and Samael does send out a party of Shadowhounds against them.
Mhm.
And this is where Moraine, after making sure that they position themselves in like a secluded area, she faces the Shadowhounds, raises her hands, and a bright flash of light shoots out from her hands. And when the light clears, the Shadowhounds are gone.
Okay.
And she reveals that what she just used is Balefire, which is very dangerous to use. Balefire is so dangerous, in fact, that not even the Forsaken will use it because at the height of the War of Power, uh, you had channelers on both sides using Balefire very like haphazardly, so they were just shooting Balefire back and forth at each other. And the thing is that because Balefire not only affects not like since it also affects time.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a very powerful channeler shooting a bolt of balefire at you, he's basically erasing you from months or even years from existence. But there's benefit to balefire because it does undo whatever person has done. So the person that gets destroyed by balefire, whatever they did in that time frame that they were erased from, gets undone, like it never happens.
That's cool.
Yeah, but we don't really see that benefit until much later. Like Moraine herself, she's only powerful enough to erase something from existence for like a couple of hours, 2 hours at most. But anyway, after this, the team continues on east until they eventually make it to Tyr. And we'll get back to them because like there are other parties heading to Tyr as well. When we go, we're gonna go back to Tarvalon with the girls and Matt. Matt does get healed and separated from the dagger. The Amerlin seat, along with a team of 12 sisters, all come together. They get several tools. They use several tools to help separate him from the dagger. One is a Sa'angreal, so that way they can greatly increase their group's power. They link themselves together. So, like I've explained it before, there are differences with men and women and things that they can do. Men are naturally more powerful channelers, so they can channel more power from the true source, while women, despite the fact being naturally weaker in the power, they're able to create emphatic links with each other. So they're able to link themselves together, and when they do that, they can direct whoever's leading the circle, because the link works like in a circle, like a circuit, and whoever's leading the circuit can direct the flow of power from the other sisters to create more powerful and more complex weaves. So that's kind of like, so whereas men are just like basically like one thermonuclear warhead, women, a group of them together, is like a bunch of Moabs working together. So with Suan leading this group, because they use a full group of 13, and as well as a Sa'angreal, they successfully separate Matt from the dagger, and they place the dagger in a thick lead box and they lock it away in the vaults. So Matt has now officially been healed, and they keep him in this tower. They keep him in the tower because, for one thing, they have to make sure he fully recovers, because since the dagger drains so much of his life force, they need to make sure that he fully recovers, and part of his recovery is he has a ravenous appetite, so they make sure he gets plenty to eat. And also, they want to keep Matt in the tower to study him, because he's also Tavarin, meaning that he, instead of him being caught up in the flow of the pattern, he affects and changes it. Now, Perrin and Rand are also Tavarin, which is why the tower is so interested in these three boys, is because there's never been three Tavarin in the same place at once, much less coming from the same village.
Oh shit.
And each one of them affects the pattern in different ways. Like Rand's is more random and more in your face about it. Perrin, I'm not really sure, like even now, I'm not really sure how he affects the pattern. I think for him, it's just more of like in the way a leader can change your life. A very powerful man who's like, a natural born leader can change your life and can like alter the course of people's, like basically inspires people to follow him. And that's kind of like how his power as a Tavarin works. Matt's, on the other hand, his power as a Tavarin is more of like it affects chance. So he's lucky. And he uses that to his advantage a lot, because he likes to gamble and play games of like dice and cards. And oftentimes he's able to, whether he realizes it or not, he's able to affect the outcome of these games and his chances in his favor. So he's almost always winning. And they want to study him for that, how his power as a Tavarin would work. And also they want to keep him close at hand, because since Matt was the one who blew the Horn of Valir at Falm, the Horn of Valir will now only work for Matt. So when Tamar Gaiden comes, Matt's going to be the one that they're going to need to blow the horn. Now, of course, there was when the ambulance seat and the other sisters were debating on whether or not what they should do with him or how they should handle Matt. Some even suggested maybe they should just arrange for his death and orchestrate somebody else to blow the horn. But that doesn't happen because even then, to some level, the Aes Sedai do have morals, and they know that would be wrong. You know,
Yeah.
it says a lot for a group of magic users that historically and routinely manipulate others to doing what they want.
Right.
Yeah, the Aes Sedai are pretty shady. They're shady as fuck. And they often put themselves in very morally compromising positions.
Shady bitch.
I mean, on some level, you can respect it. I can respect it and see, like, it's for the greater good, but depending on the Aes Sedai itself, oftentimes it's not really for the greater good, but more as like, to make sure that the tower remains in power.
Yeah.
Right? Or like the whatever will benefit the tower rather than the people as a whole.
Yeah.
So they do everything they can to keep Matt there. But eventually he does end up leaving the tower because he doesn't like Aes Sedai and he doesn't want to be around Aes Sedai. And he finds his opportunity when the girls, Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine, come to him with a proposition. So these girls continue with their studies, and Egwene herself had begun to suspect that she has a very rare gift called dream walking. She doesn't realize what it is at first. She just knows that she will occasionally have these vivid dreams that she believes may be prophetic in nature. And when she discusses this with Shiriam and the other sisters of the tower, they suspect that she might be a dreamwalker, and they do test her, but unfortunately, since there hasn't been a dreamwalker in the tower for over 300 years, they don't really know what they're doing, and they don't know how to test her. Mm-hmm. So, for the most part, they brush it off and saying, well, you're just probably suffering from the after effects of your time in Falm.
Oof.
But the only person that actually takes her seriously and actually tries to help her figure out if she does have the power is Varen. Mm-hmm. And Varen at one point tells Egwene to come to her so they can discuss it. And Varen talks to her about ter'angreal and how there was one particular Aes Sedai who lived hundreds of years ago. This Aes Sedai was a dreamwalker, but she was also experimented with ter'angreal and trying to figure out what they do. And one particular ter'angreal that she experimented was a stone ring. This stone ring was like the way it was carved. It was like carved in like a twisted pattern. Mm-hmm. I couldn't find a picture of it, but basically what this does is that if you fall asleep with it, like with some part of you touching it, like if you were wearing it on a necklace and it was touching your skin, or if you like just hold it in your hand while you fell asleep, this ter'angreal will allow you to enter the world of dreams, called Tel'aran'rhiod, and from there basically affect it and do things that a dreamwalker can do. And Varen believes that the best way to help Egwene figure out what her power is to give her a training wheel to help her like go in the right direction. So Egwene does begin experimenting with it. The thing is that the Amerlin seat, after considering everything that she and Elaine had gone through, she decides to elevate both Elaine and Egwene to the level of accepted. So just like how Nynaeve went through the acceptance ceremony and had to go through that archway ter'angreal, Egwene and Elaine both have to go through it themselves. And so Egwene goes through the archway. The day that she goes through the archway was also the day that she got that little ring ter'angreal from Varen. And when she goes through the archway, she does see fears of her past, present, and future. And while she's experiencing these visions, the Archway Terangrial begins to become destabilized, and at one point, Egwene almost becomes stranded in the Terangrial. But she does manage to make her way out of the final arch, and the sisters are all looking at the archway like something's wrong. Like there's weird feedback coming from it. And Egwene, after receiving her Great Serpent ring from the Amerlin, she asks them what could have caused that. And the sisters controlling the archway, they're like, "Well, the only time something like this has ever happened was when I don't know, two Terangrials that operate on a similar pattern or a similar wavelength come into close proximity together, and for some reason they're separate powers since they work pretty much in the same way. So, like the Archway Terangrial basically opens you a portal into like a version of Teleran Riod. So it is hinted that it takes you into the dream world, but it makes you experience your fears of your past, present, and future. So, and then there's the little stone ring Terangrial that Egwene had with her before she went into the archways, which lets you enter Teleran Riod. And Egwene doesn't tell anybody that she has the ring. The only person who knows that she has the ring is Varen. And when they tell her that, it was probably, the last time this happened was because two Terangrials that work on the same wavelength were in proximity together, they began to destabilize. And she was like, yeah, that's weird. And she's clutching she had the ring hidden in her pocket, and she's like, wow, I have no idea why that would have happened, and she books it. So now Egwene and Elaine are accepted, and they begin their studies as accepted. And eventually, the Amerlin seat gives them a task. She tells them that since the three of them are the only ones she can actually trust, the Amerlin couldn't even trust any other sisters in the tower. I mean, she could trust Moraine and Leanne, who is her keeper of chronicles. She could trust them, but thing is, Moraine is hundreds of miles away, is thousands of miles away, and Leanne, being a very public figure in the tower, she can't really send her to do some spy work on the other Aes Sedai. So she gives Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine a task of trying to figure out who in the tower could be a member of the Black Aja. And they do have several close encounters with dark friends in the tower. These particular kind of dark friends are called Grey Men, and Grey Men are basically people who may not necessarily have given themselves to the Dark One, but they were basically forcibly turned into dark friends, and when that happens, is their soul were siphoned out of their bodies, and so basically they are effective killers because you won't suspect that they are killers, but they're soulless and under the complete control of the Dark One, who at this point is still technically a Shamel, because the Shamel is still alive. He's not dead, not like in the show when he was killed off in season 2.
Yeah.
So they have several encounters with that, and they present their findings to the Amerlin seat, and they tell her that, and they do find some other clues concerning the Black Aja, especially Egwene, who began using the ring Terangrial to explore Teleran Riod. And whenever you enter Teleran Riod, if you have a very powerful need for something, it'll often take you to it. But the thing is, it's not going to be the real thing. Like, the dream world itself isn't going to take you to the real thing itself, but it'll take you to a place where the thing that you need, or what you absolutely need, it'll take you to that area in the dream world. And Egwene, for some reason, kept finding herself in the domed room where Kalandor was being held. And when because she can see Kalandor, because the thing is that the only things that appear in the dream world, because like the dream world is like a reflection of the real world.
Mhm.
But the only thing that'll appear in there are things that will stay in one place. That is like a permanent or near permanent fixture of a place. And since Kalandor has been sitting in that domed room or rather floating in the air in that domed room for like 3,000 years,
Yeah.
it appears in Teleran Riod. And she studies it and tries to actually touch it and reach out for it, but she finds that there's a barrier keeping her from getting any closer. And she reaches out with the source to try to study the barrier, and she notices that half of the barrier is woven from a complex weave of cider, but there are gaps in the weave that she suspects may be a weave from the male half's Sidon.
Mhm.
Because when she tries to like probe those gaps, there is something there that she can't see that's blocking her.
Mhm.
But anyway, she suspects that, and then during one of her dreams, she actually sees Leandrin and the other 12 sisters that fled the tower, and
Mhm.
they're all in the chamber with Kalandor, and and at one point she believes that Leandrin sees her. After telling the Amerlin this, the Amerlin believes that maybe the sisters could be planning something to trap Rand, because she knows from a report from Moraine. Because what Moraine ended up doing was she sent Min back to the tower in disguise to inform Suan what they're doing. And what they're doing right now is chasing Rand across the country and try to catch up to him when he reaches Tyr.
Yeah.
And so, like, now Suan is starting to see, like, this is no coincidence. Rand and Moraine are heading to Tyr because of Kalandor, and now Egwene is seeing in the dream world that the Black Aja is in Tyr, and it has something to do with Kalandor. So she tells the girls that she's going to entrust them with an assignment. They'll have her permission to leave the tower, and she wants them to go to Tyr and try to track down the Black Aja. Which, in hindsight, it's a dumb thing to do because you have 3 barely trained accepted
Yeah.
going after 13 fully trained sisters. Black Aja or no, they are still Aes Sedai. Though Egwene and Elaine and Nynaeve are the most powerful channelers that the tower has seen in centuries.
Mhm.
Like, Moraine and Suan are 2 of the most powerful channelers, but Elaine and Egwene are even powerful than them. And then, of course, Nynaeve is in a category all on her own. But still, she gives them permission to leave the tower to chase down the Black Aja.
Mhm.
She gives them several letters written by herself, and basically what these letters are like. They're like secret missives. They can present them to anybody, and it says these. Basically, what the letters say is the individual holding this letter works with my authority. Assist them with everything in your power, and at the greatest form of discretion. So it's like basically a get out of jail free card. By the power of the Amerlin seat, do what these girls say, and don't question them. Signed, Suan Sanchi, the Amerlin seat. And she also gives them enough money to fund their journey. And when they had returned to the tower from Falm, Elaine was shocked to learn that her mother Morghese has turned against the White Tower because the Kingdom of Andor and the queens that have served as the rulers have had a tradition of working alongside the tower. So, like, every princess, every daughter heir that is born is sent to the tower for formal training. Even if whether or not they can actually channel, they go to the tower to be formally trained by the sisters. Because alongside learning how to channel, they also learn things like diplomacy and politics and other things like that. And they receive one of the best educations you can ever get. And of course, the the city of Camelin, the throne always has an Aes Sedai advisor. So the advisor for Queen Morghese was a red sister named Eleda. Fuck that bitch. She's going to be a problem later.
Ooh.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, Eleda's the problem.
Huh?
So, and the thing is, the reason why her mom had done this is because since Elaine got kidnapped and taken to Falm and nobody knew where she was,
Yeah.
her mom was understandably pissed.
Yeah.
So Elaine, wanting to try to at least pacify her mom and get her mom back on track to like going back to like, hey, you know, don't abandon our traditions with the White Tower and shit. She writes a letter, and the girls go approach Matt, who at this point had recovered at least more or less enough to be able to travel on his own, and they ask him to deliver the letter to Camelin, to Elaine's mother. He agrees. They give him some extra money. By this point, though, he didn't really need any extra money because he had started gambling, and since his luck is so good, he won enough money to fund his departure out of Tar Valon. And while he was gallivanting through Tar Valon gambling, he actually encounters an old friend, and that old friend is Tom Merrilin. Some things had happened to Tom Merrilin. If you remember, Tom Merrilin was a gleeman that traveled with the group in Book 1, and he does make a brief appearance in Book 2. Some shit happened in the wake of Book 2. So after Rand and his party had left Caerhine, Tom Merrilin had unfortunately been drawn into the world of the Game of Houses because the king of Caerhine figured out that Tom had dealings with Rand, and since Rand had went to go meet, accepted an invitation from the king's greatest rival, the king wanted to get back at Rand somehow, and he figured out that Tom was associated with Rand. So using that as his only form of leverage, he tried to attack. He sent some men to attack Tom, and Tom had actually taken up with a young woman. So he was training this young woman to be a gleeman, and this young woman also happened to be Tom's lover. And well, the men that attacked Tom killed her. And while we don't really know what Tom did, it is heavily hinted that Tom assassinated the King of Caerhine, because by the time Book 3 happens, they received word that Caerhine had devolved into a total state of civil war, with all the noble houses fighting over who's going to get the Sun Throne. That's the T, and which is why Tom is now in Tar Valon, because after he allegedly assassinated the King of Caerhine, he fled to Tar Valon. And well, Matt meets him, and Matt tells him what he's going to be that he's planning on fleeing the city and going to Camelin to deliver a letter. Tom's like, "You're stupid. I'm going with you."
Yeah.
So those two ended up taking a ferry downriver to as close as Camelin as possible, which this very river actually goes down along the border of Andor and Caerhine, and they can see how much the Caerhinian side had devolved, because there's so many refugees trying to flee into Andor, but they're shocked to find out that the Andorans are blocking any more refugees from coming across the river. For them, it's neither here or there. They make their way to Camelin, and they do manage to get an audience with the Queen, because since Elaine had her own little signet and seal, he showed the letter to the guards at the palace, and seeing the seal, they take him to Morghese. And he's actually shocked to find that Morghese is not what he expected. She seems somewhat diminished. And also he's shocked to find that Morghese has a very interesting advisor, a guy calling himself Lord Gabriel. And he notices that Gabriel has this weird influence on Morghese. But that's not... But the way Matt sees it, it's not his problem, so he gives Morghese the letter, she reads it, and while she's still skeptical, about the Sisters of Tar-Valon, about the tower. She more or less accepts it, but her stance, she still like clings to her stance until Elaine is returned to Camelin. She's not really going to have any further dealings with Tar-Valon. And she also notices that Lord Gabriel is like actually like encouraging her to continue this this split from Tar-Valon. And still, Matt's like, all right, whatever, I'm out. But as he's leaving the castle, he can't help but notice that he accidentally wanders through a garden, and while he's going through this garden, he notices that there are some nobles coming through, and Matt has a very strong distaste for nobles and highborns, so he hides from them. And he realizes that one of the nobles is Lord Gabriel, and another is like some other like advisor kind of guy. Matt realizes that Lord Gabriel is commanding another advisor, a guy named Komar, to track down 3 girls that were sent out of Camelin, one of them including Elaine, and to assassinate them. And realizing this, Matt's plan of completely like cutting ties with Tar-Valon, anything to do with like this whole mess, is now gonna have to be put on hold because he needs to protect these girls. So Matt goes back to the inn he and Tom were staying at, and he tells Tom of what he had just heard. And while Tom is like skeptical, like, oh, those girls can take care of themselves, they're training to be Aes Sedai now, they can at least defend themselves, Matt's like, no, I can't just leave them be and leave them to be taken off guard like that. He makes plans to head to Tyr. And so Matt and Tom Maryland, both with Tom Maryland in tow, start heading east to try to catch the girls in Tyr and save them before anything bad happens. So the girls themselves, they make their way down to Tyr. They spend most of the time on a ferry going downriver. But eventually they do have to disembark. Unironically, they actually disembark on the Cairhine side of the river. And along the way, they do encounter some Aiel. And in fact, they encounter Aiel shield maidens. And these shield maidens ask them for their help because one of their sisters was injured. And Nynaeve, using her... actually uses her own abilities to heal this sister and send these shield maidens on their way. But not long after this, the girls are captured by Dark Friends of all people, and they were about to be given over to a trio of Myrddraal. But the girls were able to free themselves, and they actually end up killing the Myrddraal. Using their power, and Elaine sets them on. The thing is, they kind of go a little overboard with how they kill the Myrddraal. So Egwene sets them on fire. Elaine uses a vacuum to squish them all into like a ball, and then Nynaeve accidentally discovers that she too can use balefire and disintegrates them. The girls freed themselves and killed the Myrddraal just as the Aiel, in fact, the very Aiel that they had just helped, came to rescue them. So while Elaine, Egwene, and Nynaeve deal with the Myrddraal, the Aiel, the shield maidens, alongside some other Aielmen, come in, and they completely wipe out the Dark Friend camp. And after exchanging pleasantries, thank you for saving us, Nynaeve is upset to learn that the girl that she just healed died in the raid. But either way, the shield maidens and the Aiel in general They are warriors. They embrace death. They embrace death. They're not afraid of it.
Mhm.
They tell them that they are making their way down to Tyr, and the Aiel tell them that that's also where they're heading, because they've heard rumors that their Caracorn is heading there. So the girls end up traveling with two of the Shield Maidens, that they had met. The Shield Maidens feeling like they not only have they're honor bound to help the girls, but also because they became good friends with them. So their group eventually does make it to Tyr, and now the thing is, being in Tyr, they need to figure out where the Black Azure is.
Yeah.
Egwene has been carefully exploring Teleron Riod and seeing if she could figure out clues of where they are, and she suspects that these women are actually hiding in the Stone of Tyr itself, which is used as like the palace for the High Lords of Tyr. And still, they are trying to figure out different ways to. They're trying to figure out how they're going to track them down. At one point, when they enter Tyr, Nynaeve notices that there is a house that has like herbs and things like that, and she thinks, well, she gets this idea. Why not speak to the city's healer, the local healers? Because as a wisdom, she herself is a healer, and she can recognize other healers when she sees them. So they approach this healer, and after exchanging like pleasantries, really it's just more of like a dick measuring contest between Nynaeve and the local healer. Like they basically test each other, like how much they know about healing and herbs and things like that. This woman agrees to help them, and without really revealing too much of what they're looking for, they reveal that they're looking for some women who are criminals, and they stole some very important objects, and they need to find them. And the healer tells them that she knows of a guy who can track these people down, and this guy is called a thief catcher. Thief catchers are basically they're like detectives. They do investigations and track down criminals and things like that. And they have connections to the criminal. They kind of have connections to the criminal underbelly, and that's how they're able to figure out where the criminals are, track these people down. So she enlists the help of a thief catcher by the name of Joylin, and Joylin agrees to track these women down for Nynaeve and the girls. But unfortunately, the Black Azure really does have friends in higher places, because it is revealed later that the Black Azure were not only being sheltered in the Stone of Tyr, but currently the more recent excuse me, High Lord, the current High Lord of Tyr, is actually none other than one of the Forsaken, a man named Bilal. And they catch wind that the thief catcher basically gets caught by the Black Aja, who force him to reveal who sent him to find them, and he reveals that it was the three girls. And Leandrin and the other Black Aja, realizing who they are, they corner them and capture them and take them prisoner into the stone itself. So sadly, Nynaeve and the girls are all now being shielded and locked in the dungeon. But Egwene gets this brilliant idea, because when they captured them, the Black Aja didn't really check them, like pat them down or see if they hadn't for any weapons. And Egwene still had the stone ring. And so using the stone ring, she enters the dream world, and after doing some exploring and figuring out where she is, like where the part of the dungeon she is, she finds that one of the Black Sister that was guarding them is kind of like dozing off a bit, so she can see her form drifting in and out of the dream world. So I'm sorry, not Nynaeve. Egwene waits, waits for the moment when she flickers into the dream world, and weaving a shield, she traps the Black Sister in a shield, while just as she drifts into the dream world. And this, and she figures out that she can actually tie off weaves. So when she traps the sister in a shield in the dream world, she ties it off and returns to her main body. Still, they find that while they're still being shielded, but now the sister is being the Black Sister is incapacitated. But despite the fact that they're still being shielded and everything, it's at that point they realize, oh hey, Matt is here, because that is when Matt shows up to rescue them. So Matt and Tom Maryland make it to Tyr, and they spent a few days trying to find the girls. At one point, they actually track the girls down to the herbalist's shop, and she tells them of what had happened, and tells them that they are being held in the Stone of Tyr itself. So during the night, Matt decides to go by himself because Tom, with his bad leg, wouldn't be able to be of much help. He decides to try to figure out a way to sneak into the stone in the middle of the night. While he is exploring the city at night, he's going by rooftop to get closer to the fortress itself. He encounters Julian, the very man who betrayed the girls to the Black Sisters, also trying to do the same thing, figure out a way into the stone. And he reveals that he betrayed the girls, and he feels bad about it because he was coerced by the Black Azure to do it. Leandrin had used her little trick of compulsion to get him to spill the beans and betray the girls. So now he wants to make it right by trying to break them out. But while they're scouting out the wall to find a good place to enter, they actually come across a large group of Aiel who had snuck into the city. And the Aiel incapacitated the two men, and after questioning them, they realize, okay, they're not exactly harmless, but they're not of any threat. And they ask them, what are you guys trying to... the Aiel asked them what they're doing. They said they're trying to get into the stone to rescue some girls that are in prison there. They asked the Aiel, why are you here? They say, because we believe that that the Karakorn is here and inside the fortress already. So they go their separate ways. Matt can dimly, since it's in the middle of the night, he can barely see anything, but he does see that he can see the Aiel begin climbing up the walls and entering the stone itself. But knowing that he wouldn't be able to climb up the walls as deftly as the Aiel, Matt comes up with a different plan. So all along the walls are narrow slits. These are like in medieval architecture, especially in castles. In the battlements, there are these narrow slits for archers to be able to fire their arrows through. And Matt gets gets this brilliant idea to go in through one of them. But since they're so narrow, he needs to make it wider. Early in the book, Matt had met a Illuminator who is a member. The Illuminators are a guild of people that construct and use fireworks. So basically, like they're often hired by nobility to put on their firework displays. And he had encountered a Illuminator who actually worked at a guild that Rand and his friends had snuck into in the past book while they were trying to during their hunt for the horn. And they ended up helping her, and she in repayment for helping her, she gives them several fireworks. And Matt, being ever curious, he actually opened up a few of them to see how they work, and he kept the rest. And since he still had the fireworks on him, he slides the fireworks into the arrow slits and sets it and lights it up. And when the firework goes off, it actually blows a hole big enough for him to slip through. So him and Julian go in through this hole that they blew into the wall, and they realize that the alarm had already been sounded inside the stone. But it wasn't because of them, but it was because of the Aiel. The Aiel were already fighting the guards. So Julian and Matt were able to sneak by all the guards while they were preoccupied with the Aiel and make it down to the dungeons. And what they do find the black sister that was guarding the girls, but they notice that she's kind of in a weird state. Like, she looks like she's restrained, and almost like she's half asleep. And that's because when Egwene shielded her, she also this kind of locked her in like halfway into like a dream state and full consciousness. So even though she's shielded and restrained, she's still able, like, she still had her connection to the source. So that's why she's still able to shield the girls in their cell.
Mm-hmm.
But when he sees her, he doesn't think much of her. He just grabs the keys and unlocks the door. And the three girls are shocked to see him and are incredulous that he's even there. But they immediately leave the cell, and as soon as they walk out and see the Black Sister, Nynaeve rushes up to her and punches her in the face, knocking her out.
Damn.
And this causes her to lose her connection to the source, and the shield. And the three girls are no longer being shielded. So Matt tells them, "All right, let's get the fuck out of here," because he tells Elaine that her mom's new boy toy, Lord Gabriel, had sent somebody here to Tyr to assassinate her and the girls. And one thing I want to mention, Matt actually did foil the assassination attempts, because when he reached Tyr, he had actually reached Tyr around the same time that Lord Komar, the man that Gabriel ordered to find the girls and kill them, he actually had an encounter with him in an inn and manages to kill him before he could do anything.
Damn.
But the thing is that Matt didn't want to take any chances, because there could be others in the city looking for the girls. So he's trying to convince them, like, let's get the fuck out of here. But the girls are like, nope, we came here with a job to do, and that's to find the Black Aja, and we're going to do it. So they set off to find Leandrin and the other sisters, but sadly, during the fight, the sisters slip away and actually escape from Tenchiko. I'm sorry, not Tenchiko, from Tyr. And they do manage to capture another of the Black Aja, like incapacitate her and knock her out. But other than that, the other 10 sisters escape from the city. Now, around the same time, Moraine and her group make it to the city, and while they're trying to figure out their next course of action, Moraine was planning on just going to the Stone of Tyr by herself to confront Balal, because she realizes that there's another Forsaken in the city, and that is Balal. And she thinks that, and she comes up with a plan, because the thing about Balefire is that Balefire is unblockable even by someone as powerful as a Forsaken. So there's no counter for it. So that was her course of action. She tells Perrin and Lan to stay behind, or rather, either come or stay behind. Doesn't matter. She's going. But before they could go, she was gonna discuss their course. She was gonna have like a little quick roundup with them in the inn's private room. But just before she could walk in, Fail walked in ahead of her and Perrin, and she immediately passes out. And Perrin is confused and concerned because, spoiler alert, Fail is Perrin's love interest, and he's actually developing feelings for her. And Perrin wants to help her, but Moraine holds him back from going into the room. And she peers into the room And she's like, look on the table. You see that? And on the table is a little wooden statue of like what looks like a hedgehog. And she recognizes it, and she tells him that's a ter'angreal. Anybody who like channels into it falls into a deep sleep. Someone must have set that there and channeled something in it as a trap, so that way anyone who comes near it falls asleep. And Moraine suspects that whoever gets caught in the trap, and she believed that the trap was set specifically for her. Whoever falls into the trap will fall into like some sort of illusion too, that like some sort of like torturous illusion. And Perrin begs her to help her, but Moraine says there's nothing I can do until the ter'angreal itself wears off. Like the effects wear off. And she tells Perrin that, listen, there's more important things that we need to get to, particularly dealing with the Forsaken in Tyr. And if Rand is already in the stone, then he's in danger. So they need to help him. And Perrin doesn't want to leave Fael behind, so Moraine says, all right, do what you got to do. And she turns and leaves. So Perrin, wanting to help Fael, decides, before she leaves, he says, how can I help her then? And she tells him, well, the only way to undo this illusion is to do it from within the dream itself. But that's why Moraine didn't want to risk it, because she didn't want to like risk going in there and getting caught in the trap herself.
Mm-hmm.
And so she goes and leaves to deal with Bilal. So Perrin decides to go into the room, and he gets caught up in the dream sequence himself. And he does get caught up in the dream, but the thing about him is, being a wolf brother, wolves actually have a connection to the dream world itself, and wolf brothers are able to enter the dream world too. So wolf brothers are a form of dreamwalkers. So he realizes this, and his strong affections for Fael take over, and in his dream form, he takes on the form of a wolf, and he begins chasing, and chasing Fael through the dream sequences. There's like a number of traps and locks that are keeping her bound there. So he goes through all of them, he breaks them, and he's every time he breaks one, Fael disappears and appears in another trap. So he has to systematically break each of them down. And at one point, while he's undoing these traps, he sees what he thinks is Rand running through with running around chasing after a guy with a glowing sword. Because while this is happening, this is happening at the same time events are unfolding in the stone itself. Mm-hmm. But Perrin does eventually break the last trap, and both him and Fael come out of the dream. When this happens, they notice that the little wooden ter'angreal is broken.
Mm-hmm.
So when Perrin breaks through all the traps, this destabilizes the ter'angreal and it breaks. Thing about ter'angreals, if those of you who are wondering, like, wait, aren't Angreal unbreakable? Angreal and Sa'angreal are the only artifacts made out of Quendiar, Hearthstone, which is truly unbreakable. Ter'angreal are just enchanted objects, so they could be made out of anything. They could like stone rings, wooden statues. Really, they can be made out of anything, and they can also break. So that sword that Rand had, the Blade Master's sword, technically a ter'angreal because it was designed to be unbreakable, but it's not a Quendiar weapon. But anyway, so like I said, he thought he saw Rand running around chasing a dark figure with a glowing sword. That actually does happen, because we go back to the Stone of Tyr. Matt and Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve, they all find themselves in the central chamber and there's fighting with the guardsmen of the stone, as well as the Aiel is going on, and there's Rand. He shows up, and he's making his way towards the sword to try to grab it, but he's immediately confronted by the Forsaken Bilal. Bilal reveals that he used to know Rand in his past life as Lews Therin. In fact, the two of them you could say that the two of them were friends. And Bilal begins monologuing and tells him that the two of us that both him and Lews Therin actually resurrected the ancients. They resurrected the old practice of swordplay, because in the Age of Legends there was no wars and there was no real need to be able to learn how to fight. But Lews Therin and Bilal apparently resurrected the art of swordplay just from studying old records. And so so the two of them begin fighting. Rand conjures up a sword made of flame, and Bilal does the same thing, except his sword is made out of black fire. And when Rand summons his sword, his fire sword, you could see the image of some of herons on the blade. So unconsciously, he still sees himself. He's conjuring an image of his Blade's Master blade. And Bilal does the same thing, because his sword also has the herons on it. And Rand realizes that means that this guy is a swords master, a blades master too. So the two fight. Rand is almost overwhelmed by Bilal, because Bilal is clearly a better, more experienced sword fighter. But during a break in their fight, Moiraine shows up and confronts Bilal. And Bilal looks at her and please, you modern day Aes Sedai don't hold any kind of power towards me, and don't even come close to my power. And Moiraine basically is bet. She raises her hands, and Bilal realizes what she's about to do, and he's like, "Oh shit!" And she fires balefire at him and kills him.
Ooh.
Yeah. So Moiraine, I gotta say, I gotta give her respect, because she becomes a legend. She becomes a bit of a legend herself, because she's one of the only Aes Sedai to have faced a Forsaken and won. Because modern day Aes Sedai, they are not as powerful as channelers from the Age of Legend. The weakest of the Forsaken is still 100 times more powerful than modern day Aes Sedai. Well, okay, I wouldn't say 100 times more, like 10 times more powerful. Still, very the weakest of the Forsaken is still 10 times more powerful than the average Aes Sedai. And so Moiraine tells Rand, "Do what you must. It's time for you to put an end to this, Rand." And she gestures to the sword sword Kalandor, which is still suspended in midair. But before either him or Moiraine could do anything, black smoke appears at the top of the dome above them, and from it, Balzamon's face appears. Lightning shoots down and strikes Moiraine, knocking her out. And Balzamon begins to assault Rand. Rand narrowly avoids the assault and counters it with his own power, but he's still too inexperienced with the power to actually do anything effective against Balzamon. But as he's ducking and weaving and avoiding Balzamon's attack, Rand actually manages to maneuver himself up to the sword Kalandor, and he takes it. He reaches out and he grabs it. And when he does, while everything has happened, there is still fighting going on. The Aiel and the Tyrants are all fighting each other. But he grabs the sword, holds it up, and it begins to glow. And he proclaims that he is the Dragon Reborn. And the Aiel and the Tyrants stop fighting, and they all immediately kneel before him.
As they should.
But it's at that point that Balzamon manifests himself fully and begins to attack Rand again. Rand, using Kalandor's the power he gets from Kalandor, fights back, and Balzamon quickly realizes he's now overpowered. He's outmatched by Rand, so he flees into the dream world itself, because that's where Balzamon has been hiding this whole time.
Mhm.
And when he does this, Rand notices the weave that Balzamon used to open a door into the dream world, because Balzamon himself physically entered the dream world instead of projecting his mind. So when Rand sees that, he's able to copy it and open the doorway into Tel'aran'rhiod and physically enter it himself. It's there he starts chasing Balzamon through the dream world, and that's when Perrin sees him running through with the glowing sword. With his experience and power over the dream world, Balzamon begins warping it and throwing things at Rand to try to kill him or trap him. But Rand, using his power, using his own power and the boost he's getting from Kalandor, he keeps countering and negating everything that Balzamon is doing. Eventually, he does manage to corner Balzamon and run him through, killing him. And when he kills Balzamon, he notices something's off. Like, Balzamon still kept this dark image of a burning face over his, a mask of a burning face over his own face. So when he kills Balzamon, he notices that image disappears and he sees what looks like to be a normal man. And he suspects that he didn't actually kill the Dark One himself. And later on, when he's discussing things with Moraine, and Moraine tells him that was most likely a Shamel, the Dark One's chief lieutenant. And after considering the course of events throughout history, she suspects that Ishamel was only half sealed away, and he would go through these sleep-wake cycles throughout the last 3,000 years, and every time he was awake, he would use his Dreamwalker abilities to reach out and influence the world. So he would direct his... So Ishamel would direct the Dark Friends and send them in whatever direction he wants. He would control the Trollocs and the Miradrol and have them start attacking people. So Ishamel, for the past 3,000 years, has been orchestrating all of the major catastrophes and wars, from the 100-Year War, the Trolloc Wars, the war, Artur Pendrag's conquests. Everything. Ishamel was that driving factor, because historically speaking, a lot of these people that were at the center of these conflicts, they all reported, or in their journals, or in discussions, or if the Aes Sedai managed to capture one of them and interrogate them, they all agreed that they were being tormented by this figure with a fiery face in their dreams. Now, Rand has fulfilled another one of the prophecies, and this one was very important because this determined 100% without a doubt that Rand is the Dragon Reborn, because Kalandor can only be claimed by the Dragon Reborn. And it also fulfilled another prophecy, because in the prophecy, not only would the Dragon Reborn claim Kalandor, but the Stone of Tyr would fall, and it would fall to the people of the dragon. And it's revealed, it's not actually revealed until Book 4, but I'll go ahead and spoil it for you guys. It's revealed that the Aiel refer to themselves as the people of the dragon. In secret, though, this is something that they say to them. They refer to them to themselves, away from other, from wetlanders, as they call them, because they refer to people in the Westlands as wetlanders. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of Book 3. The book pretty much ends where the sun is rising, and people of Tyr, they began to suspect people outside of the fortress. They had gotten, they could tell something was going on, because there was, of course, you can't have a major battle going on in your fortress without somebody noticing outside of it.
Yeah.
And so the regular people are waking up, and they're beginning to hear rumors that something went down in the stone. And when they look towards the Stone of Tyr, they see a new banner is flying over the stone, and that is the dragon banner itself.
Ooh.
So the Stone of Tyr, which has been boasted as never being able to fall,
Mhm.
as an impenetrable fortress, had fallen to the Dragon Reborn and the dragon and people of the dragon.
Oh my.
Oh my!
The plot
And
thickens.
the booty thickens.
The booty thickens.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, like always, there's still there's details that I didn't go over. I just went over more important parts of the story.
Yeah.
Rand himself is now convinced that he is the Dragon Reborn, and he accepts his role completely.
Mhm.
Egwene and the other girls, they had more or less succeeded in tracking down the Black Aja and managed to capture 2 of them.
Yeah.
And Moraine is now convinced that that all of the Forsaken have been released, and that now, most likely, each of them has hidden themselves in major cities all across the Westlands. Samael is in Ilion. Bilal was here in Tyr before Rand killed him, and now she knows that Ishamel's dead, or at least she suspects that he's dead. And now they can continue on with their plans and figuring and bringing the world together. So, and Rand now also is technically the High Lord of Tyr, because since the Aiel have pledged themselves to him because they believe he is their Karakorn. And it also helps that they recognize him as an Aiel, because since Rand has the general appearance of an Aiel, red hair, he's like over 6'5" tall, and because that's pretty much the general appearance of the Aiel. They're a race of warrior gingers, tall warrior gingers.
My people, I'm just not tall, not as tall as them.
Yeah.
I'm a 7'5'6".
Yeah, Matt and Perrin, basically their whole group got separated. Like, their whole group got separated in this story, but now they're back together in Tyr. And now we will be leading up into... This will now lead up into Book 4 of the Wheel of Time, Book 4, the Shadow Rising. So a lot does. So Book 3 was important, and it was an important turning point in the overall story, because now Rand has accepted who he is. He will begin. He will begin his journey in bringing people together, the people of all the lands together, and part of his and he begins to, like I said before, he started studying extensively the prophecies of the Dragon Reborn, and to help guide this way, it'll help guide his actions, because he knows that he's going to need to figure out that he's going to have to lead everyone in the fight against the Dark One, and that fight will become known as Tamar Gaiden, the final battle. So he now needs to begin preparing the world for this final battle. And it started here in Tyr. Now Tyr is under his belt, and the Aiel chieftains the Aiel chief that showed up in Tyr tell him that they need him to fulfill their prophecies of the Karakorn. And Rand will, after studying his own prophecies, the prophecies of the Dragon Reborn, he realizes that that's his next course of action, is to get the Aiel to unite the Aiel clans, get them under his belt, and have them serve as the bulk of his army, and begin bringing the other nations together. So Book 4 will, for the most part, focus on Rand uniting the Aiel clans. and he'll actually go into the Threefold Lands to fulfill those prophecies and get the Aiel to serve him and
Okay.
bring them over into the Westlands so they can start bringing everybody else together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in most cases, he hopes to unite the people through like reason and diplomacy. Other people, he's definitely going to have to put down. So yeah, guys, that is it for book 4. I'm sorry, book 3.
Book 3.
Book 3. I'm sorry, I'm so scatterbrained right now. And like as always, thank you for tuning in and reading. I like this book. This was definitely interesting to see Rand come into who he is, and we're going to see a lot of change in Rand over the next few books. As he learns how to use his power, as he rediscovers lost talents and abilities, and as he's bringing more people together. Now, I mean, I may say bringing people together, but it's not easy. He's going to face so many different challenges. As it is, I'm already like a little more than halfway through book 7, and there's already a lot that's gone on, and it's leading up to like another major confrontation with the Forsaken. And I will say book 4 does have an interesting climatic finish, because we're gonna see more of the Forsaken, because so far we've only seen for the most part Ishamel, as he pretends to be the Dark One as Balsamol. We don't actually see Samael in this one. He does make an appearance in the next book as several of the Forsaken begin to plot and scheme together, and this is actually mainly from Lanfear, because Lanfear herself actually does appear in this book. She is seen by Egwene while they were still at the White Tower. Lanfear herself was actually kind of just perusing the White Tower, looking for something. It doesn't really say what exactly she was looking for, but it was confusing for Egwene, and I believe Elaine does see her too. And she doesn't really reveal herself to them, like who she is to them. She just kind of like shows up, says some like snarky words to them, and then dips before they can see her, like figure out who the fuck is this. But we do see Lanfear again at the beginning of book 4, because this time she does present herself to Rand and comes out with it like, "Oh, I'm not Celine, I'm Lanfear. I'm your boo."
Queen.
Yeah, Lanfear is the jealous ex.
The problematic queen that she is.
God, I can't wait until we get to book 5, because
that's where the fun begins.
That's where the fun begins, because Lanfear she causes a scene, blood and ass flies everywhere, and it was so dramatic. I thought it was funny as hell.
The drama.
I thought it was funny it was funny as hell, because she causes a scene because she realizes that Rand had taken on a lover.
Ooh, spoiler for 2 books ahead.
It's yeah. Gotta reel them in, like, oh, tune in 2 weeks for that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, this was book 3, The Dragon Reborn, and next week we're gonna be doing book 4, The Shadow Rising.
Yes. So again, there was no intro earlier. So I'm Devin. This is I know Jacob, you introduced stuff. I didn't. We just jumped right into it. So hi, I'm Devin.
And I said you were Devin.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, so Devin here.
In the description, of course, will be the link tree, and that'll lead you to all the goodies of the other pods, as well as the YouTube channel if you want to see the video portion of this podcast, as well as others. But that's it for today's episode. Catch us next time to talk about book 4. And what's the title of it?
The Shadow Rising.
The Shadow Rising. So until then, bye.
Bye.